Welcome to a journey into the misty origins of one of autumn's most beloved traditions, where the boundary between history and legend blurs like candlelight flickering through carved eyes, and where we discover that the glowing faces watching from October porches carry stories far older and stranger than most who carved them might imagine. Before we begin, I just wanted to say thank you for joining, and I hope your thoughts start to slow and you start to rest. Also, comment down below what time it is where you live. Now, let's get started. Now, picture an autumn evening as darkness settles across the countryside. The air carries that distinctive chill that speaks of summer's end and winter's approach, tinged with the earthy scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke drifting from distant chimneys. The wind stirs bare branches with a gentle whisper that sounds almost like voices, and in that liminal time between day and night, between the warmth of hearth and the darkness beyond, strange lights begin to appear. There, on a doorstep, a face glows with inner fire, its carved features dancing in the candlelight that burns within. Triangle eyes pierce the darkness with amber light. A jagged smile grins from shadows. The flame flickers and wavers, making the face seem almost alive, almost watching, almost aware of those who pass by in the October night. And there another glowing face, and another. Whole streets lined with these luminous guardians, their carved expressions ranging from welcoming to menacing, from whimsical to frightening. Children's laughter mingles with the autumn wind as they admire the glowing pumpkins, while adults remember their own childhood nights when jack-o'-lanterns seemed magical, mysterious, perhaps a little frightening in their flickering animation. But have you ever paused in the midst of carving to wonder? Why do we do this? What ancient impulse drives us to select these round orange fruits, hollow them out, carve faces in their flesh, and set candles burning within? The act is so familiar, so embedded in our autumn traditions, that we rarely question its origins or meaning. Yet behind this cheerful custom lies a tale that stretches back centuries, across oceans, into the misty legends of Ireland where it all began. Tonight, we will trace this glowing tradition from its source, a story about a man named Jack, a flickering flame in the darkness, and the transformation of an ancient legend into the beloved custom that lights our October nights. We will discover that the pumpkins grinning from our porches are the descendants of a much older practice, that their light carries meanings our ancestors understood in ways we have largely forgotten, and that in their carved faces we can glimpse the enduring human need to mark the boundaries between light and darkness, safety and danger, the living world and whatever might lie beyond. Picture yourself holding a freshly carved pumpkin, its weight solid in your hands, its interior still damp with the stringy pulp you've just scooped out. You've cut triangle eyes and a jagged grinning mouth, following a pattern as familiar as breathing, repeating a ritual performed by millions of others across North America and increasingly around the world. You set a candle inside and light it, watching as the carved features suddenly come alive with inner glow. The pumpkin transforms from a simple vegetable into something more, a face, a presence, a beacon in the October darkness. It sits on your doorstep, welcoming trick-or-treaters, marking your home as a participant in Halloween festivities, creating atmosphere and delight. But where did this tradition come from? Why pumpkins specifically? Why faces? Why is the candle burning inside? The answers lie not in modern American Halloween celebrations. though that is where the practice reached its fullest flowering, but in older traditions from across the Atlantic, in Irish legends told by peat fires on dark autumn nights, in beliefs about the boundaries between worlds and the lights that might guide or mislead travellers in the darkness. Picture Ireland centuries ago, when most of the island lived in small communities scattered across green landscapes, when nights were truly dark without electric lights to push back the shadows, when the world beyond the village hearth could seem full of mystery and danger. In this world, people told stories to explain the strange lights sometimes seen flickering over bogs and marshes, lights that seemed to dance and beckon, that appeared and vanished mysteriously, that travellers learned to regard with caution and suspicion. These lights, will-o'-the-wisps, corpse candles, fairy lights, were explained through various legends across Celtic lands. But one story in particular would eventually travel across the ocean and transform into the jack-o'-lantern tradition we know today. It is a story about a man too clever for his own good, about bargains made with dangerous powers, about a soul condemned to wander forever between heaven and hell, lighting his way with a coal carried in a carved vegetable. This is the legend of Stingy Jack, and from his wandering light in Irish folklore to the cheerful pumpkins on American porches, his story illuminates the path of a tradition that spans centuries and crosses cultures, adapting and transforming while maintaining its essential character. A light in the darkness, a carved face watching through the autumn night, a connection to older beliefs about the season, when the boundary between worlds grows thin. To understand why this tradition took root and flourished, we must first understand the season itself. Autumn in the northern latitudes, when days grow short and darkness comes early, when the harvest is gathered and winter's approach can be felt in every cold wind. Picture October in traditional agricultural societies, a time of both celebration and anxiety, of abundance from successful harvests, but also awareness of the lean months ahead. This time of year held special significance in Celtic tradition. The festival of Samhain, celebrated at the end of October and beginning of November, marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter's darkness. Picture communities gathering to bring livestock down from summer pastures, to slaughter animals that couldn't be fed through winter, to store the harvest that would sustain them until spring. But Samhain was more than just a practical seasonal marker. Picture the belief that at this turning point in the year, the boundary between the world of the living and the realm of the dead grew thin and permeable. The spirits of ancestors might return to visit their old homes. Other, less benevolent entities might slip through the veil between worlds. The darkness held mysteries and dangers that required precautions and rituals. In this context, lights took on special significance. Picture fires burning on hilltops, marking territory, providing protection, creating islands of safety in the darkness. Picture candles in windows guiding friendly spirits home while warning away those with ill intent. Picture the importance of light itself, scarce and precious in a world without electric illumination, powerful in its ability to dispel darkness and the fears that darkness contained. The jack-o'-lantern tradition emerged from this complex web of beliefs and practices, a light to guide and protect, a face to frighten away malevolent spirits, a marker of the season when the ordinary rules of reality might not fully apply. It spoke to deep human needs, the need to mark boundaries, to claim safety, to have some measure of control over the mysterious forces that seemed to move through the autumn darkness. Picture the psychological impact of a face carved into a vegetable, lit from within by flickering candlelight. The human brain is exquisitely sensitive to faces. We see them in clouds and rock formations, in the patterns of wallpaper, in the random arrangements of shadows. A face commands attention, triggers recognition, engages our social awareness even when we know it's not real. A jack-o'-lantern exploits this deep-seated response. Picture approaching a house on a dark October evening, seeing the glowing, carved face watching from the porch. Even knowing it's just a pumpkin, just a carved vegetable with a candle inside, it creates a frisson of strangeness. A moment when imagination engages before rational understanding dismisses the response. For children especially, jack-o'-lanterns occupy a delicious space between scary and safe. Picture a child examining a carved pumpkin, fascinated by its grotesque features but secure in the knowledge that it can't actually do anything, that it's under adult control, that it's part of festive fun rather than genuine threat. The jack-o'-lantern allows exploration of fear in a controlled, enjoyable context, but originally in the legend we will explore, the carved face served different purposes. Picture it as apotropaic magic, a fierce face meant to frighten away evil spirits, to mark a boundary they should not cross, to protect those within from whatever might wander in the autumn darkness. The very grotesqueness of the carved features served a purpose, to present something more frightening than whatever spirits might approach, to meet supernatural threats with a physical representation of human defiance and protection. In the chapters ahead, we will follow the jack-o'-lantern from its legendary origins to its modern manifestations. We will meet Stingy Jack, that clever, difficult man whose bargains with the devil left him wandering forever between worlds, lighting his path with an ember carried in a hollowed turnip. We will explore the Irish tradition of carving vegetables, turnips, potatoes, beets into grotesque faces and lighting them to frighten away Jack and other wandering spirits. We will travel across the Atlantic with Irish immigrants who brought their traditions to America, where they discovered pumpkins native to the Americas, far larger and easier to carve than European turnips, perfectly suited to transformation into jack-o'-lanterns. We will watch as this imported tradition merges with American harvest celebrations and the emerging Halloween holiday, becoming one of the most recognizable symbols of October. We will explore the evolution of jack-o'-lantern carving, from simple frightening faces to elaborate artistic expressions, from warding off evil talismans to welcoming decorations, from folk tradition to commercial phenomenon. We will discover how a legend about a wandering soul became a cheerful seasonal custom, how ancient beliefs about protective lights transformed into family activities and artistic expression. And throughout this journey, we will pause to appreciate the layers of meaning embedded in this simple act of carving a pumpkin and setting a light within, the connection to harvest traditions, the acknowledgement of darkness and the need for light, the playful engagement with fear and mystery, the communal participation in seasonal rituals that connect us to both past and present. So settle in comfortably as we prepare to explore the origins of the glowing faces that watch from October porches. Let the gentle flicker of candlelight guide us back through time, across the ocean, into the misty landscapes of Irish legend where a man named Jack made a bargain he would regret for eternity, and where the light he carried in his wandering has illuminated our autumn nights for generations. The jack-o'-lanterns are glowing now, their carved faces watching the October darkness with expressions both welcoming and strange. Behind their familiar grins lies a story worth telling, a tradition worth understanding, a connection to older times when the line between legend and reality flickered like candlelight in the autumn wind. Now picture the last night of October, centuries ago, when these Celts gathered for their most important celebration, a night they called Samhain, when the veil between worlds grew thin. The wind carries the scent of smoke and dying leaves across darkening hills. The harvest has been gathered, the cattle brought down from summer pastures. The community stands at the threshold behind them, the abundance of autumn, ahead the darkness of winter. But Samhain marks more than just a change of season. Picture the belief that on this particular night spirits can cross over, ancestors might return, and other entities might slip through that thinning veil to wander among the living. The Celtic year divided into two great halves, light and dark. Samhain, celebrated from sunset on October the 31st through the following day, marked when darkness began its reign. The word Samhain, pronounced Samhain, means summer's end. Picture communities gathering as light faded on October 31st, knowing that from this moment darkness would dominate until spring's return. But this transition held significance beyond astronomy. Picture the Celtic understanding that moments of transition, dawn and dusk, seasonal turnings, doorway thresholds, were times when barriers between realms grew thin. Samhain represented the greatest transition of all, a time out of time when the living and dead might commune, when supernatural forces moved more freely through the world. The belief that boundaries dissolved at Samhain shaped everything about the celebration. Picture families welcoming the spirits of recently deceased relatives, setting extra places at feasts, leaving portions of food and drink as offerings. The ancestors were honoured, invited to participate one final time before journeying permanently to the other world. But not all spirits were benevolent. Picture also the belief that malevolent entities, the Aosi or fairy folk, evil spirits, shape-shifting creatures might take advantage of the thinning veil. These beings range from mischievous to dangerous, capable of stealing children, blighting crops, or causing illness. The ancient burial mounds the Cid were said to open on Samhain night, releasing their inhabitants. Picture the sense that on this night, ordinary protections might not hold, that the safe, familiar world could become strange and dangerous. The darkness beyond the fire's light seemed full of movement and unseen watchers. Into this darkness, the Celts brought fire. Picture great Samhain bonfires lit on hilltops across Ireland and Scotland, their flames leaping into the October night, visible for miles around, creating islands of safety in the sea of darkness. These fires served multiple purposes. Picture them as a sacred flame, blessed by druids, imbued with power to purify and protect. Families would extinguish their home fires and relight them from the communal Samhain bonfire, establishing connection between community celebration and individual household. The smoke carried protective qualities. Picture cattle driven between two bonfires, the smoke washing over them as a blessing against disease and harm. Picture people dancing around flames, sometimes leaping over them in acts of purification, the fire's heat and light driving away both cold and spiritual danger. While bonfires provided community protection, individual families needed their own defences against wandering spirits. Picture the practice that emerged of creating portable lanterns from root vegetables, large, dense turnips quite different from modern varieties. Picture careful hands hollowing out a turnip's dense flesh by firelight on Samhain evening, creating a cavity deep enough to hold a candle or burning coal. The work required patience. Turnips are much harder to carve than pumpkins, their flesh resistant to the knife. Once hollowed, the turnip received its most important feature, a face. Picture grotesque features carved into the surface, twisted mouths with jagged teeth, triangle eyes glaring with fierce intensity, threatening expressions meant to repel supernatural threats. The psychology was sophisticated. Picture the belief that evil spirits, encountering such a fierce countenance lit from within, would believe they faced something dangerous and turn away. The carved lantern served as protective magic, using fear to drive away fear. Picture turnip lanterns placed in windows, fierce faces to warn away evil spirits while welcoming ancestral souls. Picture travellers carrying them through Samhain darkness, the flame protected by the turnip's shell, providing both practical light and spiritual protection against entities believed to wander the night. Picture young people wearing costumes and masks, going house to house, performing songs in exchange for food, a practice called guising. The disguises served multiple purposes: avoiding recognition by harmful spirits, moving safely through the liminal space by not appearing fully human. The guisers carried their own carved turnip lanterns. Picture groups moving through darkness, their lanterns casting dancing shadows, their costumes making them seem like spirits themselves, entertaining households while serving as ritual protection. Picture also souling, receiving soul cakes in exchange for prayers for the dead. These simple baked goods, marked with crosses, were given to those who promised to pray for deceased relatives. But soul cakes were also left as offerings at doorsteps and crossroads, honouring ancestors while placating potentially dangerous spirits. Samhain extended beyond a single night. Picture several days when ordinary rules were suspended and special care required. Crossroads held particular significance, meeting places where the veil became thinnest. Wells and springs where water emerged from earth were regarded as portals between worlds, requiring special respect and offerings. As Samhain fires burned low and dangerous hours passed, picture families gathering close, their turnip lanterns still glowing, waiting for dawn to signal the passing of this liminal time. The morning of November first brought a world transformed. Harvest ended, winter begun, the dead honoured and released. In these ancient Celtic practices, we find the roots of our jack-o'-lantern tradition. The fierce faces carved in turnips, the protective light burning within, all would eventually transform into the cheerful pumpkins of contemporary Halloween. But first, the tradition needed a name, and for that we must meet a legendary Irish trickster whose wandering light would forever be associated with these carved lanterns. Who was Stingy Jack? The story begins in the damp countryside of Ireland many centuries ago. Jack was no hero. He was a trickster, a wanderer, a man who drank too much and cared for little beyond himself. His nickname, Stingy Jack, came from his habit of never paying for his own ale. But Jack's cleverness was not limited to taverns. One night, as the folktale goes, he met the devil himself. The devil had come to claim his soul, but Jack, sly and silver-tongued, convinced him to join him for a final drink. When the time came to pay, Jack suggested the devil transform into a coin to cover the cost. Amused by the idea, the devil agreed. Jack snatched up the coin and slipped it into his pocket next to a small silver cross. The devil, trapped, could not change back. Jack would only free him under one condition, that the devil leave him alone for a full year. Reluctantly, the devil agreed, but Jack wasn't finished. A year later, when the devil returned, Jack tricked him again. This time he convinced the devil to climb into an apple tree to fetch him a piece of fruit. Once the devil was in the branches, Jack quickly carved a cross into the trunk, trapping him once more. This time the devil promised not to bother Jack for 10 years. Eventually, as all men must, Jack died. But heaven would not take him. His soul was stained with lies, deceit, and sin. Hell, too, refused him Satan, still smarting from Jack's tricks, barred him from entering. Condemned to wander the earth forever, Jack begged for a light to guide his way. The devil, mocking him one final time, tossed him a single burning coal from the fires of hell. Jack placed it into a hollowed-out turnip to protect it from the wind. And so, he walked the dark roads of the world, his eerie lantern glowing. From then on, the Irish called him Jack of the Lantern. Over time, the name shortened, and so was born the Jack-o'-lantern, a ghostly figure carrying his cursed light, forever searching for rest he would never find. On cold autumn nights, villagers told their children, "If you see a wandering light in the darkness, it may not be a candle." But Jack, roaming still, with his turnip lantern, looking for another soul to trick. The tale of Stingy Jack travelled far beyond the Irish countryside. For generations, families carved their own jack-o'-lanterns, but they were not made from pumpkins. In Ireland and Scotland, the people used what they had at hand: turnips and large beets. Gnarled, twisted and tough, these vegetables made eerie little lanterns when hollowed out. Inside, a small coal or candle flickered. Their grimacing faces were not for decoration alone. These lanterns were meant to frighten away wandering spirits, including Jack himself, who was believed to roam the earth each Halloween night. The carved turnip lantern became a tradition. Parents told their children, "If you keep a jack-o'-lantern at your door, restless souls will stay away." A single light, glowing in the darkness, could protect the home. But as Irish immigrants came to America in the 19th century, they discovered something new. On this side of the ocean, turnips were rare and difficult to carve. Pumpkins, however, were everywhere. Large, hollow, and soft enough to cut, pumpkins offered the perfect canvas for the jack-o'-lantern's haunting face. The tradition transformed. What had once been a rough, eerie little turnip became the glowing orange pumpkin we know today. Year after year, the faces grew more elaborate, sometimes silly, sometimes terrifying, but always tied to the old belief: a lantern to keep the spirits away. What began as a myth of Stingy Jack now burned brightly on every doorstep during Halloween, a reminder of how legends travel, change, and take new forms as people carry them across oceans and generations. By the late 1800s, the jack-o'-lantern had become a fixture of Halloween night, but its meaning was more than just a decoration. For many families, carving a lantern was an act of protection. Children whispered that spirits walked freely on All Hallows' Eve, the night when the veil between the living and the dead was at its thinnest. People believed that on this single night, souls long gone could return, wandering among the living. Some came searching for loved ones. Others, it was said, came with darker intentions. The jack-o'-lantern stood as a guardian. Its glowing face was meant to scare away restless spirits, demons, and even Stingy Jack himself. At every doorway, a pumpkin flickered in the cold autumn air, a warning to anything lurking in the shadows. This home is protected. But over time, fear gave way to festivity. In towns and villages, carving pumpkins became a communal act. Families gathered around tables with knives and candles, children scooping seeds and pulp while parents shaped the faces. What began as a ritual of fear and protection slowly evolved into one of creativity and fun. Still, even in the laughter, something eerie lingered. A jack-o'-lantern on a porch was more than a decoration. It was a symbol of Halloween itself, a reminder of ancient myths, restless spirits, and the thin veil between worlds. Each glowing pumpkin carried centuries of superstition, folklore, and fear within its crooked smile. And on Halloween night, as the wind whistled through dark streets, the flickering light in their hollow eyes seemed to whisper, "The dead are near." When Irish immigrants carried the legend of Stingy Jack to America, they also brought with them the rituals of All Hallows' Eve. But in the New World something changed. Turnips, small and difficult to carve, gave way to the pumpkin, larger, softer, and far more luminous. By the mid-1800s, these glowing pumpkins appeared on porches and windowsills across rural America. At first, they carried their old meaning of protection, warding off restless souls, guarding doorways from evil, but slowly they began to take on new life as a symbol of community, festivity, and imagination. Children no longer whispered only of spirits. They laughed as they carved crooked grins, eerie faces, and wild designs. A ritual once bound to fear and superstition became a celebration of creativity. In towns and villages, jack-o'-lanterns lined the streets during Halloween gatherings, glowing like small fires against the crisp autumn dark. And as America grew, so too did the holiday. Halloween transformed from an old-world night of dread into a modern spectacle of costumes, trick-or-treating, and haunted fun. Yet through it all, the jack-o'-lantern remained at its heart, its flickering eyes watching every child in disguise, every prank in the night, every ghost story told by candlelight. Even now it holds that quiet double meaning. For some, it's just a playful decoration. For others, it's a centuries-old reminder of wandering souls, cursed men, and the thin veil between life and death. Every Halloween, when you light a pumpkin and set it on your doorstep, you're partaking in a tradition older than America itself, stretching back to Ireland, to Europe, to the myth of a man who tricked the devil and was doomed to walk the earth forever. When Irish and Scottish immigrants crossed the Atlantic in the 19th century, they carried their legends with them, tales of ghosts, fairies, and the cursed figure of Stingy Jack. But America offered them something different. Here, the land grew a fruit unlike any they had known before, the pumpkin. Round, bright, and hollow, it was far easier to carve than the turnips and beets of the old world. Soon, these glowing pumpkins lined the porches of immigrant homes, keeping alive the old belief that light could ward away restless spirits. By the late 1800s, the jack-o'-lantern was no longer just a symbol of fear, it became a marker of festivity. During parades and autumn harvest festivals, families carved faces into pumpkins not only to scare away evil, but also to celebrate the season. The tradition blended with the growing American holiday of Halloween, turning the jack-o'-lantern into its most recognizable emblem. And yet, even as it became a symbol of joy, its darker roots remained. The crooked smiles and hollow eyes still echoed the story of Jack, forever wandering with his cursed lantern. For children, the glow meant fun and imagination. But for the older generations, it was a quiet reminder of the old myths, that spirits still roamed the earth on All Hallows' Eve. In time, the jack-o'-lantern left its place on porches and fields, becoming a part of popular culture itself. It appeared in art, in literature, and in film, smiling, grinning, and sometimes menacing. It became both playful and eerie, comforting and uncanny. Today, when you see a carved pumpkin, it carries both legacies. On one hand, it's a family tradition, a child's laughter as they scoop out seeds, a candle flickering on a quiet autumn night. On the other, it's a symbol of something older, darker, and eternal, a reminder that on Halloween, the veil between the living and the dead is thinner than we think. The jack-o'-lantern is not just decoration. It is a story, a warning, and a light in the dark. From a trickster named Jack wandering the dark roads of Ireland to glowing pumpkins on porches across the world, the lantern has never stopped reminding us of one simple truth. Light pushes back the darkness, even if only for a while. When you see that warm flicker inside a carved face this Halloween, remember it is more than just decoration. It is a memory of those who came before us, a whisper of old fears, and a promise that even in the longest night, there's always a glow to guide us. So as the candles burn low and the world outside grows quiet, let the story rest with you. Let the shadows fade. Let your mind wander, and let the soft glow of history keep you company. Good night, and may your dreams be gentle.